A desperate bargain. Victoria Hayes stood outside the towering glass building of Monroe Technologies, her hands trembling as she clutched a folder containing documents that would change her life forever. The autumn wind whipped through her dark hair, but she barely noticed the cold. Inside that folder was a marriage contract, a business arrangement that felt more like selling her soul than finding her future. 3 months earlier, her world had been so different. She had been teaching art to children at a community center, living in a modest apartment with her younger sister Claire, and dreaming of opening her own gallery someday. Her father's import business had been struggling, but she never imagined how bad things truly were until the creditors came knocking. The medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment 2 years ago had drained their savings. When her father's business partners embezzled most of the remaining funds, the Hayes family faced complete financial destruction. Their house went into foreclosure, and Claire's university tuition hung in the balance. The proposal. That was when Sebastian Monroe's lawyers appeared at their door. The Monroe family needed to merge with an old business partner's legacy, and an ancient contract required a marriage union to seal the deal. Victoria's grandfather had been Sebastian's grandfather's business associate decades ago, and the archaic clause had been forgotten until now. Sebastian Monroe was a legend in the tech world. At 35, he had built a software empire worth billions. His face appeared on magazine covers and business journals. He was known for his brilliant mind, his ruthless business tactics, and his complete lack of personal relationships. Rumors suggested he had built walls around his heart so thick that nobody could penetrate them. The offer was straightforward. Marry Sebastian for 2 years, maintain public appearances as his wife, and in return, all her family's debts would be cleared. Claire's education would be funded, her father could start fresh, and Victoria would receive a substantial settlement when the contract ended. She had met Sebastian only once before agreeing. He had been distant, professional, treating the meeting like a business negotiation rather than a discussion about marriage. His steel blue eyes had barely met hers, and his handshake had been brief and cold. He made it clear this was purely transactional. The wedding day. The wedding took place on a gray November morning at the Monroe estate. Unlike the grand society wedding Sebastian's status might have warranted, this was a small, private ceremony. Only immediate family and necessary witnesses attended. Victoria wore a simple cream dress she had purchased herself, refusing to use Monroe money for something that felt so hollow. Claire had helped her get ready that morning, tears streaming down her face. Victoria had forced herself to smile, to pretend this was a sacrifice she was willing to make, but inside, her heart felt like stone. Sebastian arrived at the ceremony in a black suit, looking impossibly handsome but utterly unreachable. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw set in an expression of grim determination. When the officiant asked if he took Victoria as his wife, his "I do" sounded like a business agreement being finalized. The kiss they shared after being pronounced husband and wife lasted barely a second. His lips touched hers with all the warmth of winter frost. Life in the mansion. The Monroe mansion was a masterpiece of modern architecture, all clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and minimalist design. It sat on 5 acres of landscaped grounds outside the city, isolated and pristine. Victoria was given the entire east wing as her personal space, while Sebastian occupied the west wing. They might as well have been living in different buildings. Sebastian left for his office before dawn and returned well after midnight. On the rare occasions Victoria saw him, he offered polite nods and nothing more. They had separate schedules, separate lives, separate existences under the same roof. The staff was professional but distant, clearly instructed not to get too familiar with the temporary Mrs. Monroe. Only Helen, the head housekeeper, showed Victoria any genuine kindness. She was a woman in her 60s who had worked for the Monroe family for decades. Finding purpose. Victoria spent her days exploring the mansion, trying to find purpose in the emptiness. She discovered a sun-filled room on the 2nd floor that had once been an art studio. Canvases were stacked against walls, brushes sat in dried containers, and an easel stood abandoned in the corner. Helen explained that Sebastian's mother had been a painter before she died in a car accident when Sebastian was 15. Nobody had entered the room since. Something about the space called to Victoria. She began cleaning it, organizing supplies, and eventually, she started painting again. Her paintings during those first weeks were dark and heavy, full of shadows and cold blues. They reflected her emotional state, trapped in a beautiful prison with a husband who treated her like a stranger. A glimmer of hope. 6 weeks into the marriage, Margaret Monroe, Sebastian's grandmother, invited Victoria to tea. Margaret was 80 years old, sharp-minded, and the family matriarch. Unlike her grandson, she welcomed Victoria with genuine warmth. They met at Margaret's penthouse apartment overlooking the city. Over tea and delicate pastries, Margaret asked about Victoria's life, her art, her dreams. For the first time since the wedding, Victoria felt like a person rather than a contract obligation. Margaret mentioned a charity art exhibition happening the following week at the Bennett Foundation. She insisted Victoria attend as her guest. Sebastian would be too busy with work, as always, but Margaret wanted Victoria to meet people in the art community. That invitation would change everything. At the exhibition, surrounded by beautiful paintings and passionate artists, Victoria would meet Ryan Bennett. He was the foundation's director, a man who valued creativity and human connection above all else. Their first conversation would last 2 hours, and for the first time in months, Victoria would remember what it felt like to be truly seen. As she left the exhibition that evening with Ryan's business card in her hand and hope stirring in her chest, Victoria had no idea that Sebastian had been watching from across the room. She did not see the way his hands clenched into fists or the dark emotion that flashed across his face when Ryan made her laugh. The seeds of jealousy had been planted, and soon they would grow into something neither Victoria nor Sebastian could ignore. The Art Foundation. Victoria arrived at the Bennett Foundation on a bright Tuesday morning, her heart lighter than it had been in months. The foundation occupied a restored warehouse in the Arts District, with exposed brick walls covered in children's artwork and large windows that let natural light flood the space. The sound of laughter and creative chaos filled the air. Ryan Bennett met her at the entrance, his warm smile immediately putting her at ease. He wore jeans and a paint-splattered shirt, a stark contrast to the formal business attire she had grown accustomed to seeing on Sebastian. His brown hair was slightly messy, and his green eyes sparkled with genuine enthusiasm. "Welcome to our little creative sanctuary. I am so glad you decided to volunteer. The kids are going to love having a real artist working with them." Ryan led her through the building, explaining the foundation's mission. They provided free art education to children from underprivileged backgrounds, offering a safe space where creativity could flourish. The program served over 200 kids each week, ranging from ages 5 to 17. Victoria felt something awaken inside her as she watched the children paint, draw, and sculpt with unbridled joy. This was what she had been missing. Purpose, connection, the ability to make a real difference in young lives. Building friendship. Over the following weeks, Victoria threw herself into the foundation's work. She taught painting classes 3 times a week, helped organize supply donations, and even assisted Ryan in planning a student art show. For the first time since her marriage, she felt alive. Ryan was different from anyone she had ever met. He listened when she spoke, valued her opinions, and treated her as an equal. He had inherited wealth from his family but chose to dedicate his life to philanthropy rather than business. His passion for helping others was infectious. They began meeting for coffee before her volunteer sessions, discussing art, philosophy, and their dreams for the foundation's future. Ryan shared stories about his own journey, how he had walked away from his family's real estate empire to pursue meaningful work. Victoria found herself opening up about her love of art, her complicated family situation, though she carefully avoided details about her marriage. One afternoon, as they cleaned up after a particularly messy finger painting session with the younger children, Ryan turned to her with curiosity in his eyes. You have this sadness in your paintings, Victoria. Even when you are teaching the kids and smiling, I can see it in your work. Beautiful, but heartbreaking. What are you running from? Victoria paused, a paintbrush frozen in her hand. She had not realized her emotions were so transparent. I am not running. I am just trying to find myself again. Sometimes we make choices that seem right but leave us feeling lost. Ryan nodded, not pushing for more. Well, I hope you find what you are looking for. And I hope you know that you have made a real difference here. These kids adore you, and honestly, so does everyone on staff. You bring light with you. Those words meant more to Victoria than any amount of money Sebastian's name could provide. Sebastian's awakening. Meanwhile, Sebastian Monroe was experiencing emotions he had spent years suppressing. He had built his empire by eliminating distractions, by keeping his focus razor-sharp on business goals. Emotions were weaknesses, attachments were liabilities. That philosophy had served him well since his mother's death 20 years ago. But lately, work felt meaningless. He found himself distracted during board meetings, staring at his phone, wondering what Victoria was doing. He started coming home earlier, manufacturing excuses to be in common areas when she returned from the foundation. He noticed everything. The way her eyes sparkled when she talked about the children she taught. The paint stains on her fingers that she forgot to wash off. The lightness in her step that had not been there during their first months of marriage. And he noticed how often Ryan Bennett's name came up in conversation. His assistant, Thomas, had worked with him for 8 years and recognized the signs. Mr. Monroe, you have been checking your watch every 10 minutes for the past hour. Is there somewhere you need to be? Sebastian forced his attention back to the contract before him. No, I am fine. Just distracted. Thomas raised an eyebrow. If I may speak frankly, sir, distraction does not suit you. Whatever is bothering you, perhaps addressing it directly would be more efficient than pretending it does not exist. The Charity Gala. The confrontation came at the annual Children's Arts Charity Gala, a black tie event that brought together the city's elite philanthropists. The Bennett Foundation was being honored for its community impact, and Ryan had specifically invited Victoria to attend as his guest at the foundation's table. Sebastian received the same invitation through his grandmother Margaret, who seemed delighted that both her grandson and Victoria would be attending. What Margaret did not mention was that she had orchestrated the seating arrangements to ensure Sebastian would have a clear view of Victoria and Ryan throughout the evening. Victoria wore a midnight blue gown that Helen had helped her select. It was elegant and understated, highlighting her natural beauty without trying too hard. She had pulled her hair back in a soft updo, and for once, she felt confident and beautiful. Ryan met her at the entrance of the hotel ballroom, his face lighting up when he saw her. You look absolutely stunning. I am going to be the envy of every man here tonight. Victoria laughed, feeling her cheeks warm. You are too kind. This is your night, Ryan. The foundation's work speaks for itself. As they entered the ballroom, Ryan kept his hand lightly on her back, guiding her through the crowd. He introduced her to donors, artists, and community leaders, always emphasizing her contributions to the foundation's programs. Victoria felt valued, appreciated, seen in ways she had never experienced with Sebastian. The breaking point. Sebastian sat at his family's table across the ballroom, his grandmother beside him, watching every interaction between Victoria and Ryan. His jaw clenched when Ryan whispered something in Victoria's ear that made her throw her head back in laughter. His hands gripped his champagne glass so tightly Margaret worried it might shatter. Darling, if you keep glaring like that, people will talk. Margaret's voice was gentle but knowing. I am not glaring. Sebastian forced his expression to neutrality, but his eyes never left Victoria. You are in love with her. Margaret stated it as fact, not a question. That is ridiculous. This is a business arrangement. Margaret patted his hand. Oh, my dear boy. You can lie to yourself all you want, but I have watched you these past months. You light up when she enters a room, even if you pretend not to notice. You ask about her constantly. You have become completely undone by a woman you claim means nothing to you. Sebastian remained silent, unable to deny what his grandmother had observed. The evening's program included a video presentation showcasing the foundation's impact on children's lives. Victoria appeared in several segments, teaching painting to a group of young students. The camera caught her natural warmth, her patience, her genuine love for what she was doing. Sebastian watched his wife on the screen and realized he was seeing someone he had never allowed himself to know. After the presentation, Ryan took the stage to accept the foundation's award. In his speech, he thanked numerous people, but his words about Victoria cut through Sebastian like a knife. I want to especially thank Victoria Monroe, who joined our team just 3 months ago but has already transformed our painting program. Her dedication, her talent, and her heart have touched so many young lives. Victoria, would you please stand? The room erupted in applause as Victoria stood, clearly embarrassed by the attention but glowing with pride. Ryan's eyes never left her face, and Sebastian saw something there that made his blood run cold. Admiration, respect, and something deeper. Something that looked dangerously like love. Confrontation. When the formal program ended and guests mingled during the reception, Sebastian crossed the ballroom with determined strides. He found Victoria and Ryan at the foundation's table, looking at photos from a recent student exhibition on Ryan's phone, their heads close together. Victoria, we need to talk. Sebastian's voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. Victoria looked up, surprised to see her husband. She had not realized he was even attending. Sebastian, hello. Do you know Ryan Bennett? The two men shook hands, the tension between them palpable. We have met briefly at other events. Sebastian's tone was cold. Victoria, I need to speak with you privately. Ryan sensed the undercurrent of conflict. I should check on the caterers anyway. Victoria, I will find you later. As Ryan walked away, Sebastian took Victoria's elbow and guided her toward a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The night air was crisp, and the sounds of the gala faded behind the closed glass doors. What is going on, Sebastian? Victoria pulled her arm free, confused by his intensity. What is going on? Sebastian's control finally shattered. What is going on is that my wife spends every day with another man. You laugh with him, you work with him, you glow around him in ways you never have with me. Victoria stared at him in disbelief. You cannot be serious right now. You have ignored me for 4 months. You made it very clear that our marriage was just a contract, nothing more. You told me not to expect anything from you beyond financial support. So I found something meaningful in my life, something that makes me feel like I matter. Because of him. Sebastian's voice rose. Because of Ryan Bennett. No, because of the work. Because of the children. Because of finding purpose again. Victoria felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. Ryan has been a good friend, someone who actually sees me as a person rather than an obligation. A friend. Sebastian laughed bitterly. I have seen the way he looks at you, Victoria. That is not friendship. And what if it is more? Victoria's voice cracked with emotion. What right do you have to care? You pushed me away from day one. You have been a ghost in my life, Sebastian. A name, a bank account, a cold presence in a big house. You do not get to suddenly be jealous when someone else treats me with kindness. Sebastian ran his hands through his hair, his carefully maintained composure completely destroyed. You are right. I have been terrible to you. I have been cold and distant and everything you did not deserve. But watching you with him tonight, seeing you happy and alive and completely beyond my reach, I realized something. He stepped closer, his blue eyes intense with emotion Victoria had never seen before. I realized I have made the biggest mistake of my life. I thought I could keep you at a distance, that I could protect myself by not caring. But I was wrong, Victoria. I was so wrong. What are you saying? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I am saying that somewhere between our wedding day and tonight, I fell in love with my wife. And I have been too much of a coward to admit it until I thought I might lose you. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with months of unspoken feelings and wasted time. Victoria's heart raced, torn between the walls Sebastian had built and the genuine anguish she now saw in his eyes. Inside the ballroom, Ryan watched through the glass doors, his own heart sinking as he recognized the intensity of the conversation taking place. He had known from the beginning that Victoria was married, but he had hoped that her cold, distant husband would never wake up to what he had. Now, watching them on the balcony, Ryan realized his hope had been foolish. Victoria stood frozen, Sebastian's words echoing in her mind. 4 months ago, this confession would have meant everything. But now, after building a life without him, after finding herself again, after connecting with someone who had valued her from the start, everything felt impossibly complicated. You cannot do this, she finally said, her voice shaking. You cannot ignore me for months, push me away, treat me like I am invisible, and then suddenly decide you have feelings when you see me happy with someone else. I know, Sebastian said quietly. I know I have handled everything wrong. But my feelings are real, Victoria. I am not asking you to forgive me or trust me immediately. I am just asking for a chance to prove that I can be the husband you deserved from the beginning. Victoria turned away, looking out at the city lights through tears she could no longer hold back. I need time, Sebastian. I need to think. Take all the time you need, he said softly. Just please, do not give up on us before we have even really begun. As they stood on that balcony, the future remained uncertain. Victoria's heart was pulled in 2 directions, between the security of what could be with Sebastian and the authentic connection she had found with Ryan. The choice before her would define not just her own happiness but the lives of 2 men who had both, in their own ways, come to love her, the weight of decision. Victoria spent the following week in emotional turmoil. She moved through her days in a fog, teaching her art classes at the foundation with forced smiles while her mind spun with impossible choices. Sebastian's confession had shaken the foundation of everything she thought she understood about their marriage. Sebastian kept his word about giving her space, but his presence became impossible to ignore. He started leaving small gestures around the mansion. Fresh flowers appeared in her studio each morning. Her favorite coffee waited for her at breakfast, perfectly prepared. He left handwritten notes, not asking for anything, just sharing thoughts about his day or commenting on paintings she had left drying in her studio. One note in particular made her chest tighten. The blue painting with the sunrise breaking through clouds. That is how I feel when I see you now. Like light is breaking through years of darkness. No pressure, just wanted you to know. Ryan noticed the change in her immediately. They sat in his office after a particularly challenging class with the teenagers, and he set down his coffee cup with a sigh. He told you how he feels, did he not? Your husband. Victoria looked up, surprised. How did you know? Ryan smiled sadly. Because you have been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders all week. And because I saw you 2 on the balcony at the gala. I could not hear the words, but the emotion was clear enough. I do not know what to do, Ryan. Victoria's voice broke. 4 months ago, I would have given anything to hear Sebastian say those things. But now everything is different. I have built a life here, found purpose, found friendship with you. And you are wondering if his feelings are real or just jealousy. Ryan finished her thought. You are wondering if he loves you or just cannot stand seeing you happy without him. Victoria nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. How do I know the difference? Ryan reached across the desk and took her hand gently. Victoria, I need to be honest with you about something. Over these past months, I have developed feelings for you that go beyond friendship. I think you know that already. Her breath caught. Ryan, Let me finish, please. He squeezed her hand. I care about you deeply. In another world, another situation, would fight for you with everything I have. But here is what I have learned in my years of working with people and trying to make a real difference in the world. Love is not about possession or timing or even deserving. It is about truth. What do you mean? Ryan stood and walked to the window, looking out at the children playing in the courtyard below. The truth is that you married Sebastian for noble reasons, sacrificing your own happiness for your family. The truth is that he pushed you away out of fear, not malice. And the truth is that somewhere in all of this mess, there might be something real between you two if you are both brave enough to find it. But what about what I feel for you? Victoria asked quietly. Ryan turned back to her, his eyes gentle. What you feel for me is real too. I will not diminish that. But ask yourself this. Is it love or is it gratitude? Is it romance or is it the comfort of being seen and valued after months of invisibility? Those are important distinctions, Victoria. Sebastian's past revealed. That evening, Victoria returned to the mansion determined to have an honest conversation with Sebastian. She found him in the library, staring at a photograph she had never seen before. When he heard her enter, he quickly set it down, but she crossed the room and picked it up. The photograph showed a young woman with kind eyes and dark hair, holding a small boy on her lap. Both were laughing, covered in paint. Is this your mother? Sebastian nodded, his jaw tight. That was taken in the studio upstairs, about 6 months before she died. I was 15. Victoria sat down beside him, waiting. Sebastian was quiet for a long moment before he began to speak, his voice rough with old pain. My mother was the warmth in our family. My father was always focused on business, on building the empire, but my mother balanced everything. She painted, she laughed, she made our house feel like a home. When she died in that car accident, something in my father broke completely. He threw himself into work even harder, and I learned from him that caring too much meant suffering too much. He looked at Victoria, his blue eyes vulnerable in ways she had never seen. When our marriage contract was presented, I convinced myself it was perfect. A business arrangement with no emotional risk. I could fulfill the obligation without opening myself up to loss. But I was wrong, Victoria. You were never just a contract to me, even from the beginning. That terrified me, so I pushed you away. Why are you telling me this now? Victoria asked softly. Because you deserve to know why I have been such a coward. Because you deserve to understand that my coldness was never about you. It was about my own fear of losing someone I cared about again. Pushing you away was supposed to protect me, but all it did was guarantee I would lose you anyway. Sebastian, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Are you in love with me, or are you just jealous that someone else made me happy? He met her eyes directly. 3 months ago, I could not have answered that honestly because I had not allowed myself to feel anything. But now, after watching you come alive, after seeing the incredible person you are when you are allowed to be yourself, after lying awake every night wishing I could go back and do everything differently from the start, I can tell you with absolute certainty. I love you, Victoria. Not the idea of you, not the convenience of you, but the real you. The artist, the teacher, the woman who paints her emotions, the person who gives everything to those children at the foundation. Tears streamed down Victoria's face. I do not know if I can trust this, Sebastian. I do not know if I can risk my heart on someone who hurt me so deeply. I know, he said quietly. And I am not asking you to decide right now. I am just asking for the chance to prove myself. Give me time to show you that this is real, that I can be the partner you deserve. Margaret's wisdom. The next day, Victoria visited Margaret Monroe at her penthouse. The older woman had been watching the situation unfold with her characteristic perceptiveness. She poured tea for them both and settled into her favorite chair. "You are here because you need guidance," Margaret stated. "You are torn between my grandson and Ryan Bennett, between duty and desire, between what might be and what could have been." Victoria nodded, grateful for Margaret's directness. "How do I choose? How do I know which path is right?" Margaret smiled. "My dear, you are asking the wrong question. This is not about choosing the right path. It is about choosing your truth. Let me tell you something about Sebastian. After his mother died, that boy locked his heart away so tightly I wondered if he would ever feel anything again. He became a machine, brilliant but empty. When you came into his life, I saw something shift. Slowly, painfully, but definitely. But he hurt me," Victoria whispered. "He made me feel worthless. He did, and that was unforgivable." Margaret's voice was firm. "But tell me, Victoria. When you close your eyes and imagine your future, your real future beyond contracts and obligations, who do you see beside you?" Victoria closed her eyes, letting her heart speak honestly for the first time. She saw Sebastian in the art studio, learning to paint beside her, laughing when he got colors wrong. She saw him meeting the children at the foundation, his corporate armor slowly melting. She saw years of learning each other, building something real from the broken pieces of their beginning. And underneath it all, she felt something that had been growing quietly despite everything. Not just attraction or gratitude, but genuine love for the complicated, damaged, beautiful person Sebastian was becoming. "I see him," she admitted. "I see Sebastian. But I am terrified." "Of course you are," Margaret said. "Love is terrifying, especially when it comes wrapped in hurt and complication. But let me ask you this. Ryan is wonderful, kind, available, and safe. Do you love him?" "I care about him deeply." "That is not what I asked." Victoria met Margaret's knowing gaze. "No. I do not love him the way he deserves to be loved. I love the way he makes me feel, the life he helped me build, but not him. Not the way someone should love their partner." Margaret nodded. "Then you have your answer, difficult as it is. The honest conversation." Victoria met Ryan at a quiet cafe the next morning. He knew before she spoke what she had decided. He could see it in her eyes, in the way she held herself. "You are choosing him," Ryan said gently, not an accusation but a simple statement. "I am choosing to try," Victoria corrected. "I am choosing to see if Sebastian and I can build something real from this disaster of a beginning. But Ryan, I need you to know that these months with you have changed my life. You reminded me who I am. You gave me back my sense of purpose and value." Ryan reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You did that yourself, Victoria. I just provided the space for you to remember. And for what it is worth, I think you are making the brave choice. The easy choice would have been to walk away from Sebastian or to choose me because it felt safe. Fighting for something difficult, something complicated, something that might not work but might be extraordinary if it does, that takes real courage." "You are too good," Victoria said through tears. "I do not deserve your understanding." "Everyone deserves understanding," he replied. "And Victoria, I mean this sincerely. If things do not work out, if Sebastian cannot become the man you need him to be, I will still be here. Not waiting in the wings, because I will move forward with my own life, but as a friend who will always care about your happiness." They said their goodbyes with a long embrace, both acknowledging what might have been while accepting what actually was. New beginnings. Victoria found Sebastian in the art studio that evening. He was standing in front of one of her paintings, a recent piece that showed two figures reaching toward each other across a stormy landscape. "I have made my decision," she said from the doorway. Sebastian turned, his entire body tense with anticipation and fear. "Whatever you have decided, I will respect it." I am willing to try, Victoria said carefully. Not to go back to how things were, because that was broken from the start. But to begin again, as two people who are choosing each other, learning each other, building something real. The relief on Sebastian's face was profound. Thank you. You will not regret this, Victoria. I promise you. She held up her hand, stopping him. I need you to understand something, Sebastian. This is not forgiveness. Not yet. This is an opportunity. You hurt me deeply, and trust does not rebuild overnight. We start fresh, but we start carefully. Therapy, both individual and couples. Real conversations, honest emotions, no more walls. Anything, he said immediately. Whatever it takes. And I am keeping my work at the foundation. That part of my life is mine, and it matters to me. I would never ask you to give that up. Sebastian stepped closer. Actually, I was hoping you might let me volunteer there too. I think those kids could teach me a lot about letting go and being present. Victoria smiled for the first time in days, a genuine smile that lit up her whole face. I think I would like that. 6 months later. The transformation did not happen overnight. Sebastian and Victoria attended therapy every week, learning to communicate, to be vulnerable, to navigate the complex emotions of their unique situation. There were difficult conversations, tears, setbacks, and moments when Victoria wondered if she had made the right choice. But there were also breakthroughs. The first time Sebastian painted beside her in the studio, awkward and laughing at his own lack of skill. The day he met the children at the foundation and she watched him crouch down to their level, really listening to their stories. The evening he shared memories of his mother, finally grieving properly after 20 years. The morning she woke up and realized the distance between their separate wings felt wrong, that she wanted to close that physical gap. They moved slowly, deliberately, building friendship before romance. Sebastian learned Victoria's favorite things, not through asking but through paying attention. Victoria learned to see past Sebastian's walls to the tender heart he protected so carefully. Ryan remained a friend, his relationship with Victoria settling into something genuine and uncomplicated. He eventually began dating a museum curator, and the four of them sometimes had dinner together, proof that complicated beginnings could lead to mature, healthy outcomes. One evening, as they stood in the art studio watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, Sebastian pulled Victoria close. She fit against him naturally now, the tension and awkwardness long gone. I love you, he said simply. Not because I am afraid of losing you, not because of jealousy or obligation, but because you are extraordinary and I am grateful every day that you gave me a second chance. Victoria turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. I love you too. The real you, the person you are becoming, the husband you are learning to be. Their kiss was nothing like the cold brush of lips at their wedding. It was warm, deep, full of genuine emotion and hope for a future they were building together. The contract that had brought them together would expire in 18 months, but neither of them mentioned it anymore. They were writing a different story now, one based on choice rather than obligation, on love rather than convenience. Victoria returned to her canvas, adding final touches to a new painting. This one showed two figures no longer reaching across a storm but standing together, hands clasped, facing the sunrise. What will you call it? Sebastian asked, watching her work with admiration. She smiled, adding one final stroke. Second chances. Because that is what they had given each other. A second chance at love, at trust, at building something beautiful from broken pieces. And sometimes, those second chances turned out to be the greatest gifts of all. The end.